there, I'm Ranger Erin, coming to you from the Parklands of Floyd's Fork. And in this video, we're going to talk about seed dispersal. Breaking down those two words, we know that seed is that new plant life, kind of like a plant baby. And then dispersal means to get around. So it's when those seeds get a chance to move out. And the reason that they need to move is that if that tree, that big old tree, that mama tree, dropped her seeds directly below her, her babies are never going to be able to compete with her. They're never going to be able to get the sunlight that they need. They're never going to be able to get the nutrients and the water from the soil that they need, because that big adult tree is going to soak up all the sun and soak up all the nutrients in the soil with their bigger root system. So as a seed, they do get a chance to move around, whereas when they're an adult, they don't really get a chance to move around. So those seeds really want to move away from the parent plant so that they get a chance to get all of their needs met in their life. But before we talk about the different ways that seeds can move around, I want to first talk about what is a seed. So that seed is a little bit more than just a baby plant. There's more going on inside of the seed. Most of it isn't actually that new plant life. Inside every single seed in the world, from the biggest seeds, coconuts, those giant coconuts are seeds, to those tiny little itty bitty seeds that are on the outsides of strawberries, they all have some things in common. So one of those things is that they're going to have the new plant life, and that's what we call the germ. So that germ, it's not like the kind that you wash your hands to get off your hands. That germ is that new plant life. It's so tiny you wouldn't be able to see it with your naked eye. You would have to use a microscope. It's also going to have a whole bunch of food and water. So usually wrapped up in some type of food package full of water to make it through the winter, so that they can last sometimes even several winters before they're going to sprout and turn into that new plant. And then wrapped up on the outside of it, we're going to have a part that's called the hull. And that hull is that protective outer shell. And it can be really, really thick, like on a walnut or a hickory, super hard to get into, or it might be super thin, again like that strawberry, or maybe like that dandelion, who's got to be nice and light to fly away. And then the last parts that may be on a seed are some type of structure to help it get around. And there's going to be different types of structures based on how they're going to be dispersed. So whether that's going to be water, wind, animal, gravity, or fire, they're going to have different types of structures to get around. I have interrupted a squirrel eating an acorn to take a closer look about what's going on with this acorn. So this acorn, it lost its cap. It means it's ready to go. We can easily see that outer hull protecting all of it. That white inside, that's going to be the food package, and the water are all mixed up in that. That's kind of what we think of as a nut. That's kind of what we think of as most of what a seed is, and it's going to be that food package, and that's why other animals like to eat it. And then what's going to be invisible to us, because it's going to be too small for our eyes to see, is going to be that little germ, and that is what that new plant is. It's a very tiny part of the whole seed. And then this type of seed, all it does is it rolls away. So it's going to use gravity to get around. So those structures are going to be a little bit different based on if they're getting around by wind, water, gravity, whether they're going to explode and shoot out, we call this ballistic seed dispersal, whether they're going to use fire, whether they're going to grab a hold of some animals and ride around on the outside of them, whether they're going to travel through an animal on the inside. They're all going to have different types of structures in order for them to get around. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some different examples of each one of those different ways that our seeds can be dispersed. The structure of this hickory nut is very round, and that way when it drops down from the tree, it uses gravity to just roll away and find a new spot. This thing that looks like a corn dog is a bunch of seeds from the cattail behind me, and this uses the wind to disperse itself. The Osage orange tree likes to grow near water, and when the fruit is ripe and ready, it's going to roll off into the water and float downstream to land on some other bank and grow a new tree. This is the pine cone from a giant tree called a sequoia. It doesn't live out here around Louisville or Kentucky. It's way out west in the North America. But this has a very special type of seed dispersal that it needs fire. So in a fire habitat, a habitat where they have a lot of forest fires, plants tend to adapt to that so that they can be spread during a fire. These are the seeds of the jewelweed plant. And this type of seed dispersal that the jewelweed plant uses is called ballistic. And ballistic means that it's going to shoot out kind of like a rocket. Some plants use animals to get around. Like these little hitchhikers have clung on to my jeans and are going to ride around until it's time for them to get either brushed off or picked off. And you can imagine that that can happen with all types of things like animal fur or wings and feathers. Some plants have figured out how to ride around inside of animals. They'll make a really tasty fruit like a mulberry or the fruit of a mayapple that an animal like a box turtle, like Ranger Russell, will come along and eat that fruit up. And when they're all finished with it, they're going to leave behind some scat, and that scat is going to be full of nutrients, and it's going to be full of seeds. And now those seeds that have found a new home in a place with lots of nutrients are going to sprout up just fine. In this video, what we went over is why do plants need to move around? It's to get away from those parents so that they can find all of their needs. We talked about what's inside of a seed. It's a little bit more than just that plant life. And then we also talked about the different ways that plants can be dispersed out in their different types of habitats. Thank you all for joining me.